Living in East Texas, we know a thing or two about heat and humidity. Even though we're used to it, sweltering summers get to a point where they just become unbearable. And 2011 is a prime example of that, and a summer that every East Texan will never forget.
Tyler had about 46, a consecutive streak of 46 days that reached 100 degrees or greater in 2011. And then on August 13th, they failed to reach 100 degrees, and so that streak ended. But then they picked up the streak again on the 14th and continued on through the end of August in 2011.
Typically, an East Texas summer features multiple chances at afternoon pop-up storms. What made 2011 extra challenging was the lack of rain.
So in 2011, we had a pretty dry year. We had elevated drought conditions, extreme drought conditions, and the months of June, July, and August came in about 1, 2, or 3 inches below seasonable normals.
When combined, the above-average heat and lack of rain from that summer made living in East Texas difficult, especially for those who live off the land.
2011 was a huge challenge for us as ranchers. We were a young family. Baxter was just born in 2010. And we were progressively trying to grow our herd. And so when 2011 hit, we had put out approximately a little over $30,000 worth of fertilizer to start that year off and get our hay season going, and it didn't rain.
For Benny's land in Rusk County, the extreme heat and lack of rain meant his cattle would soon see their water supply evaporate.
2011, this stock tank here was completely dry. There was no water in it at all. So our cattle that were in this field had to rely on our well water. In 2011, you could drive a truck out through that, where that's all underwater right now. So substantially less groundwater then, and our grass, this was all brown. There were no grass. Our cattle still have some grass availability right now.
Thankfully, there are species of cattle that have adapted to the heat of East Texas, and they fared well in 2011.
These are Brahman cattle. They have short hair and excessive skin, so it's easier for them to stay cool and not as hot. Those Angus over there are under a shade tree or in the water. These are out here eating grass and getting bigger.
Benny had to make some difficult decisions that year, but he was determined to make it through the tough times.
The American rancher and farmers are some of the most resilient people that you'll ever meet. One of the biggest parts of our lifestyle is making sure that our cattle are in the best shape that they can be in and taking care of them in the best way that we can, because that's our livelihood.
Moving forward, Benny turns his attention to the next generation of rancher.
It's something we're passionate about, and we're passionate about sending it on to the next generation. So our management style now and the things we do now are going to impact for when he takes over and moves it to the next level.
Now that leaves one last question. Will the summer of 2022 rival the summer of 2011? You might be surprised at how different the two summers have been so far.
We're really not on pace to reach those record levels that we set in 2011. Now that's not to mention that it's not going to be hot, because it is. It's miserable. We've had those 100-degree days. We've had those days where it's been 99 and our heat index is 105 to 110, and we're going to continue to have those throughout the summer. But ultimately, if we're looking in a comparison, we're not on pace to reach the record levels that we did in 2011.
When it comes to high energy costs, homeowners may be searching for alternatives when it comes to powering their home. After all, Texas produces and consumes more electricity than any other state. In 2014, John Moore and his wife began the process of making their home more energy efficient.
And the reason that we did it was, living out in the country, the power grid was not very reliable.
Something that has paid off so far for the Moore family, as concerns over a strained power grid during the recent June heat wave made headlines.
The air conditioning that we're using right now in our home, we're making the electricity for it.
According to SEIA, the National Trade Association for the U.S. solar industry, residential solar sales have soared in the last decade, and they predict Texas will be the nationwide leader in solar energy sales within the next 5 years.
I like the very low electric bill. I like having a power plug that works whenever the grid goes down. I like it that my wife's curling iron works when the neighbor's wives' curling irons don't work. That's always a plus.
But Moore says it's not as simple as sticking some solar panels on your roof.
I think the key is to determine what you want.
You should also consider the layout of your home, your monthly usage, expectations, and how much you want to invest.
If you want to be completely reliant on yourself, then you probably should look at what we did, which is to have solar panels. We also have a battery backup system, and we have a generator. So if you don't have a lot of access to the sun's power to power the solar panels, then you also have the batteries, and then as a backup to that, you have a generator.
So how realistic is it to become self-reliant? For that answer, we turn to the pros.
The short answer is yes, they are reliable enough to get off-grid if you're dedicated to the proposition. The real challenge is you really have to have a super efficient house or a super huge battery budget in order to make a swing at it.
But for those interested starting off small with a grid-tied unit, the long-term investment could be worth it.
If the arrows are moving to the right, that means you're buying. If they're moving to the left, you're selling. But the first thing they tell you, that 001, that's how many I've purchased, so that's delivered to me. That's my demand charge. I've had 23,000 watts of demand. And then that 057, I always remember Heinz 57 is the good stuff. I've sold 94,000 kilowatt hours.
Some final tips: be realistic with your expectations.
I always tell my clients to don't expect a check every month. That's not, you can't put all the solar on your house, turn everything off, and then, get a residual cash flow there. But you can not have to have that cash flow going out the window to the power company.
And watch for scammers.
A major red flag is if they're really pressuring you to sign up fast. We certainly encourage folks to sleep on it, take a week, get a few prices, and most importantly, if you do end up getting kind of pressured into sign and have any second thoughts, you do only have 3 days to be able to cancel that without penalty.
When you are ready to buy, make sure to choose a reputable company.
You want someone who's done this for a long time, who knows what they're doing, they're certified, and they have a good reputation. Ask if you can talk to some of their other customers. If they're willing to let you do that, they're probably a safe bet.
And pay as much as you can up front.
Pay as much of it up front in cash so that you're not financing a lot of it. That's the best way to go. You have to finance it, talk to your bank.